This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
And welcome back to the X-Cast. As ever, the truth is in here. And thanks very much for joining us today. You are listening to our special Fight the Future Minute series of podcasts, in which we take a look at the X-Files feature film Fight the Future 1 minute at a time. I'm your host for this episode, Carl Sweeney, and this is our coverage of the 8th minute of the film, which begins at 7 minutes 0 seconds as the black oil starts to inhabit the young boy, Stevie, played by Lucas Black. And this episode ends with the fire department arriving on the scene. And to discuss this minute, I'm joined once again by Luke Winch. Hey, Luke.
Hello again, Carl.
How's it going? And are you looking forward to rounding off this this stuff with the kids that we're talking about today?
I am, yeah. I'm looking forward to this minute. I think it's quite a bit we could talk about, actually, in this minute.
Ah, interesting. I mean, one thing I was going to ask you just before we properly dive in, I guess, is do you think with Fight the Future that they made the right choice to have, because we're talking about the black oil and stuff, but do you think having a mythology-centred story was the way to go? Because I guess there was a bit of an option there, wasn't there? They could have done a completely self-contained, standalone, horror story or something. Monster of the Week, but they went this way. What do you think? How do you think that choice looks now?
I think it was the right choice, definitely. Particularly in the way that the mythology has evolved over the last 5 years. I think it was almost a kind of natural progression to have a movie to kind of end that first stage of the mythology, and also because of the move from Vancouver to LA, I think it was a nice kind of middle stamp, as it were. And a kind of transition period. So I think it works really well that way. And I also think that Spotnitz and Cartner did an incredible job of continuing the conspiracy, but also making it accessible to people who maybe never watched X-Files or just casual viewers.
And they prepare that quite well, don't they, in the sense of having the X-Files closed at the end of Season 5 probably gives you a more natural way to do that, doesn't it, than if you'd... I don't know. I think that worked quite well, the transition from the end, in some respects.
Yeah, it does. And I think maybe if they'd had a standalone kind of story, it might have felt a bit weird, considering that the X-Files has burnt down and they're shut down, and then they had this kind of standalone case, and then jump back into 6. It would have been quite stilted, I think.
I just wonder sometimes if, because the mythology... It depends. I mean, you get people who are really into the mythology, but sometimes what you hear is, I loved it in the first few seasons, and then I kind of lost track of it. I got more interested in the Monster of the Weeks and stuff. And I just wonder sometimes if that maybe colours the way people think about things like Fight the Future. But I think I agree. I think at the time, this is the kind of stuff people loved about the series, wasn't it? Was this slowly unravelling conspiracy that we were kind of being... It felt like it was going somewhere at this point, didn't it? It felt like we were being given the information kind of piece by piece in a really kind of interesting way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if this film or a mythology film had come out after later seasons, I think then the feeling of tiredness may have crept in then.
Okay, so I guess we should zero in on this particular minute. So yeah, you said, I'm curious to get your take, because you said there's quite a lot to discuss with this minute. So what really grabbed you about it in particular?
I really like Mark Snow's score in this moment, particularly with the black oil possessing Stevie. You can really tell that Mark Snow's utilising an orchestra really well, and he has some great little horror movie musical motifs, kind of playing with a plinkety harp and a kind of really dissonant strings behind it as well. I really like it.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things where I'm one of those viewers who I don't always notice the score, but from what I've heard so far from Fight the Future, I think it must have been a really enjoyable thing for him, to kind of be playing on a different sort of canvas than the week-to-week grind of the TV show. And of course he was doing Millennium as well, wasn't he? So he must have been a busy chap, but I imagine this was a really fun experience for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, instead of, having his computers and his synthesizers, he's probably stood in front of a 30, 60-piece orchestra instead. So it must have been great for him.
Yeah, and I remember, we were talking a bit last time about the experience of seeing the film. And I just remember that first experience of hearing the kind of reworked X-Files theme. It was very much kind of like a chills on the back of your spine kind of experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
wow, I can't believe I'm here.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this sequence is so Stevie, we just started to see the black oil in the previous minute. And I think it's this minute, isn't it, where we start to see the black oil almost kind of splits into, they look like worms, don't they? And they kind of go up through his legs and stuff. Yeah, what did you make of that? On the commentary, they were discussing somebody who'd said this kind of broke some of the rules of the black oil, but I guess the thing with the black oil is it always took on a slightly different character episode to episode, didn't it? Like the first time you see it in Piper Maru, based on what they say, the oil is just kind of a medium for the alien. It's inhabiting the engine oil or whatever, and then it kind of takes on a different form later. So I don't know if that ever bothered me.
Yeah, and also I think you kind of get the impression that this particular strain of black oil is very old and very ancient because it's been kept underground since, the cavemen times, and maybe it has a different characteristics than some of the other oils that we've had in the TV series. I don't know.
The X-Files is quite an interesting series in that respect, though, isn't it? In that a lot of stuff goes somewhat unexplained, doesn't it?
Mm.
Like we have this whole war in heaven or whatever up in space with the aliens and the faceless rebels and things that's kind of playing out off screen and things like that. You know what I mean? I guess that contrasts with some other sci-fi shows which would probably bring those elements to the foreground. But I guess it's because the X-Files is trying to, a lot of the time it's trying to play in quite a realistic key, isn't it? And I guess there are things like that which maybe would destroy some of that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, definitely. I've always liked the way the X-Files has done that, and it's very much, for all its extreme ideas, it does try and keep you grounded in a sense of reality, and we are dealing with the human side of this conspiracy, as it were, and these fantastical wars going on in space.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing that struck me about this minute is when the kids flee. I suddenly thought, like, maybe if one of them had stayed with Stevie, that might have been a good idea. You know what I mean?
I've actually got a note that says "Good friends - run."
What did you make of how that played out, though? Because I guess one of the things is that I'd forgotten we get kind of a time transition in the same shot, don't we? Because the camera kind of comes up out of the ground and we see it's like the suburban, whatever it is, the location. And we get the on-screen credit, don't we? North Texas, present day. So, like, we knew it was the present day, but this explicitly confirms it, I guess. And then, like I say, within the same shot almost, it transitions to that arrival of the fire department. Like, it doesn't cut away. It kind of plays out. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I really like that transition, actually. I think it's well edited, and you kind of have the sound of the sirens over the image of the boys running, and then it kind of transitions, and you know all these fire crews start to go in. I like that crane shot as well, that kind of lifts up from the hole and then has the vista of the community, and then you've got, I think it's Dallas right in the background, and you've got a lovely bit of music as well from Mark Snow, which kind of gives it a bit of epicness and scope.
Yeah, and just this whole sense that the situation is just becoming even more urgent, I think, which will take us into like the next minute eventually. I mean, was there anything else about this particular minute that you wanted to point out, Luke?
I think we previously touched on this, but I like the way that this crane shot, it gives us a visual glimpse of what the aesthetic of the X-Files is going to look like from season 6 onwards in LA. It's kind of dry, very bright sunshine environments rather than the misty, kind of wet, rainy Vancouver. And it's a nice little nod to say this is kind of what the X-Files is going to look like for much of the time.
How do you feel about the transition to Los Angeles more generally, though? Because it's something I have a bit of a hard time not accepting, but I have a hard time appreciating that as much as the Vancouver gloom, if that makes sense.
I think I would agree with you as well. depending on the episode and the story of season 6, it sometimes works with what's going on, and sometimes there's this kind of glaring contrast that doesn't quite fit for me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this will be something we can chew over on the podcast in future when we get to season 6 and beyond. Okay, but I thought to mark the exit of these kids, I thought I'd run down a few more of these reasons from the Harvard Medical School. So 6 reasons kids need to play outside. So don't be put off, listeners, if your children really want to play outside by this film. Don't let this film kill you. Right, so we did the number 1 and 2 before. Sunshine and exercise.
Yeah.
Let's see. Right, number 3 is called executive function. Let's see what that means. These are the skills that help us plan and prioritise, troubleshoot, negotiate and multitask. They are crucial for our success. Creativity falls in here too, and using our imagination to problem solve and entertain ourselves. And I think the point they're trying to make is that these are skills that children need to learn and to practice, and I guess it's unstructured playtime. So yeah, I guess kids need time alone or with other kids, and I guess sending them outside is one way to get them to do that, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I was a kid, at least, there was a lot of make-believe. You'd go out into the commons and you'd have a stick and you'd pretend it was a gun or a sword, and you'd let your imagination run wild. And I think it's very important for kids to do that and to have that time to let their minds explore their kind of creative things.
Because I guess the thing with, I don't want to be anti-computer games because I like them and stuff, but with that you jump straight into a fantastic world, don't you? And I guess what you're saying is kids can make their own, which I think is true. All right, number 4 is taking risks. So I can understand this as a parent of 2 kids. Like, children taking risks can make you very anxious. You want to keep them safe. But I guess the old thing you hear is like keeping them wrapped up in cotton wool never did anybody any good as well. So I don't know. I never had any really bad childhood injuries, I don't think. I played a lot of football and stuff, but I never broke an arm or anything like that. But I guess that's part of it too. Doesn't mean you shouldn't go out just because you might get hurt.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think we should mollycoddle, the kids and basically protect them from everything. I think they need to experience risk in order to kind of grow, as it were.
Yeah, I'll just run through the last couple quite quickly because time's of the essence. But yeah, number 5 is socialisation. So yeah, kids need to learn how to work and play together, how to make friends, how to share, stuff like that, which I think is true. And the last one is appreciation of nature. So things like walking in the woods, digging up soil, seeing animals outside, going up hills or whatever is an experience to be treasured, I guess. What the website says is the future of our planet depends on our children. They need to learn to appreciate it. I 100%
agree with that statement, definitely.
All right, well, we'll leave the public service announcements there for today. Luke, that's great. I enjoyed that. Yeah, so Luke, you'll be back with me for the next minute, won't you, when the fire service turn up in full? And yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So we get introduced to Fire Captain Cools.
Oh, he's a great little character. Yeah, well, we'll talk more about him. Just quickly then, before we go, where can people find you online, Luke?
You can find me personally on Twitter at Luke_Winch. You can also find me as one of the hosts of the Fringe podcast Observing the Pattern at the OTP podcast on Twitter and also on Facebook.
That's great stuff. Cheers, Luke. And you can find the XCast in all the usual places. The XCast Basement on Facebook and at the X_cast on Twitter. That's all for this episode of Fight the Future Minute. Until our next minute, listeners, remember, as always, trust no one.
Previously on the We Made This Network. Pick a disc.
Particularly last night as well, I did a late night run to IKEA to get...
I would imagine it's probably quite good running music.
Possibly, but I don't actually listen to music when I'm running.
Fair
I'm not my running dipped a lot.
Not run at all.
Yeah, but for the... in terms of driving up the M5/M6,
yeah,
it's atmospheric music. It's very atmospheric, particularly if you're going at the speed limit.
You can't go at the speed limit on the M5. Always roadworks. Actually, I haven't driven on it for ages because it's always roadworks. It might be clear now.
The time is now, a Millennium podcast.
I remember Lance came by and picked me up to go to that, and as I was walking out to the car, we were meeting out at the car, and he saw someone's wallet, that somebody had lost their wallet. It was lying on the ground, and Lance, was ready to put the whole thing. I mean, I think we might have even been kind of running late for this thing, and we really needed to get on the road and get downtown and get to this convention. But, he picked it up, and he wasn't going to go until we could kind of figure out whose wallet it was and how to get it back to them and all of this. And he just, because he saw it, he took ownership of that moment.
Without a mouse.
This week I have a very special guest. She is the co-host of the Tomorrowland Transit Authorities, one of my favourite podcasts, and she is also on YouTube with the channel Ivy Winter. It is Christine. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me.
This episode's not going up till near the end of April.
Well, by that time I'll have already been in Disney World, hopefully.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, we both will, because I'll be back by then, if the coronavirus hasn't closed the park down.
I think Mickey will persevere. I think we'll be all right.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.